meeting of full council to discuss a report and devolution. Also, any members of the public or joining us today, you are more than welcome, and thank you for joining us. Can I also remind members, please can you make sure that your microphone is on mute until you have asked to speak. I would like to invite Tom Radin to give a brief update on the COVID positions. Tom?
Morning, Lord Mayor. Morning, everybody. Thank you for just this very brief slot on the agenda. I thought it would be useful with all members present to give a quick update. Our work continues very intensively, as you know, through your regular updates. The case rate in Leeds is rising, and we are what you might call bubbling under the national watch list. So our rates are now up to a 3% positivity, which is 3 in every 100 people who are tested are positive. Our testing rates are very high now, which is good, because that's what we need to do to keep on top of things. And our case rate is now in the mid-20s, so it's about 25, 26 on our 7-day daily rate. What that means is that we are on the radar, I think, of the National Gold meeting, but we're not yet at a stage where we are likely to require movement restrictions in our view, as our neighbouring councils have had to do over the last month or so. There has been an outbreak in a Greggs distribution centre that you may be aware of in the west of the city, which has been dealt with very effectively. And although members of staff have tested positive, a very large number of drivers have been tested, and hardly any, in fact, I think I'm right in saying none of them have tested positive, which is good news. The spread that we're seeing across the city is more across most wards now at lower levels. So it isn't like the Bradford Kirklees situation where it's concentrated in particular wards, in particular communities. If anything, it's the younger demographic across all ethnicities that have been affected. And so we are working very actively, as you'll have seen with the police this weekend, on avoiding raves and unlicensed events, and working very, very intensively with our licensing team and our enforcement team. So that's all to update. We're on the case. We'll keep you updated. If anything changes with the national position, you'll be the first to know, and we'll make sure we do an all-member call in contact with the leader and group leaders, as you'll be aware. As I say, rates are rising, but not at a stage where we should be alarmed yet, but we all need to keep on top of it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you for that report, Tom. As I mentioned earlier, we have got one item to discuss, the devolution. Could I call on Councillor Blake? Councillor Blake?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to all members of council for joining us in this really important debate this morning. As many of you are aware, this is the culmination of many years of work from many people bringing together a proposal that we can have devolution of more powers and access to resource coming down to a local level. And of course, the process that we're going through heralds moment for us in terms of the transfer of powers and funding down from Whitehall. And of course, the appropriate safeguards and future proofing for the council is a very important element, and your contribution in that regard has been very important. It's quite extraordinary reflecting back that we actually signed the deal, I think it was the 11th of March, and of course, we went into full lockdown on the 23rd of March. So I think we were very fortunate in managing to actually get the deal signed and over the line before the lockdown started, and that has enabled us to move forward with the timetable as originally proposed. So, of course, we haven't been able to do the consultation in the normal way that we would have done. You know, we would have anticipated face-to-face meetings across the board with all of our partners who've been very much involved in moving this forward. But I'm very pleased to tell you that in spite of the restrictions that we've all been under, the West Yorkshire consultation has achieved the highest number of responses of any of the consultations that have previously taken place. And whilst many of them have been online, we've also been able to undertake consultation with people who would have been felt digitally excluded by sending out direct mail shots to households as well. So I think we owe a debt of gratitude to everyone who has helped to support the consultation process. And I want to just pay tribute to everyone on the council who has played their part, and not least through the different scrutiny meetings, both across Leeds, but also at a West Yorkshire level as well. So this is part of the process that we are required to go through by government, responding to the consultation, the issues that have been raised, and then we will take this later today to our executive board, where the deliberations of today will be considered and then go for, hopefully, for sign-offs and submitted into the government process, along with similar processes from the rest of the West Yorkshire district. So many areas have been considered, and the opportunities in moving forward into economic recovery as a result of the COVID outbreak could not be more important. So all of the work around skills, infrastructure, transport, all of those areas that we will be reflecting on. And because of the in-depth discussions we had with government, I'm also pleased to acknowledge that we've got the largest gain share of any area in the country, £38 million a year over a 30-year period. I think we all recognise the centralised model of governance that we have in this country is become out of date, and this is an opportunity for us to contribute to reset the model of governance. And it's absolutely crucial that we still maintain our own powers locally and as we draw down more powers from the centre. I'm conscious that the clock is ticking, Lord Mayor. I just would like to say in moving the report that we are prepared to accept the amendment that has been put forward by the Conservative group, and very pleased always to have local scrutiny over planning and spatial strategy. So with that, Lord Mayor, I think my 5 minutes is up. So I'm very pleased to open the debate on this very important matter. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor James Lewis to second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Carter to move an amendment.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I move the amendment tabled in my name, and thank Councillor Blake for agreeing at the outset to accept the amendment that I have tabled on behalf of the Conservative group. This has been a long road to get to the point we're at today, and there is no doubt that there is a lot about the devolution deal which is to be welcomed, not least the point that we have the greatest gain share of any devolved authority so far at 38 million, as well as all the other powers that go with it. And devolution is long overdue. It's well known that this isn't my ideal solution deal. I would have much preferred a city region deal, and continue to believe that that would have been the best for Leeds. However, the deal we've got is probably all at this stage we can get. And I have to say, I'm grateful to the Minister Simon Clarke and to the Chancellor Rishi Sunak for engaging much more fully than had been the case previously with the Conservative group on this council. Everyone's worked extremely hard to get the deal to where it is. But we do have concerns, and they are significant, and I'll go through them fairly briefly, and other colleagues will pick up more detail as we go on. In view of the fact that the amendment has been accepted, we shall now vote in favour of the proposition. That does not betoken, of course, that we will support the ultimate deal, and it will depend on the responses from the combined authority as much as the government as to how strong our support remains. Peter Harrand will be talking about scrutiny, which is an area which concerns us extremely seriously, as it should all members of the council. I would say this to all members: if you believe that devolution will not change the way the city operates, and if you believe that some of the powers that we have had will not be eroded, then you're living in another world. And you all need, I think, to reflect very carefully upon that. This will be the biggest change to local government in 50 years, and it will affect all the constituent authorities as much as the devolved authority itself. There, of course, could still be changes to what the final deal is, and we will all need, therefore, to be consulted and give our final consent. And we want to see, and this is the reason why we tabled the amendment, we want to see the final granular detail about what we are being asked to agree to. And I would strongly suggest that that is a view that should be taken by members of all parties. On the consultation process, I have to disagree with Councillor Blake, and whilst I do congratulate and thank officers for the effort they've put in, for West Yorkshire to say that 4,000 responses out of a population of over 2 million is a resounding success stretches credibility to its absolute limits. And to say it's the best consultation of any of the devolved authorities merely means that we are higher up the sliding scale of failure than they are. Now, I accept that we have consulted in a very difficult time, and that therefore was forced to effect the result. But I think the message is very clear. The general public, for whatever reason, are not sure. And it is therefore, I think, beholden upon all of us to remember that that is the case. There has been no ringing endorsement for this deal. Now, I would remind members that we had a referendum on a mayor for Leeds back in whenever, and the vote, a very large vote, was 64% against. So we have a lot of, a big credibility gap to bridge, and we owe it to our constituents and all residents of Leeds to make sure that that credibility gap is breached. We have concerns about taxation and finance at a time when the country is looking to somehow bridge the gap again in terms of the massive amounts of finance that have been spent on combating COVID, particularly within the economy. A West Yorkshire mayoral tax will go down like a lead.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll conclude at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Collins to second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Conservative amendment to the White Paper has been proposed in order to try and give Council more control in the future. The people of Leeds voted against having a mayor during the referendum in 2012. It seems ironic that the government now wishes us to take more powers and responsibilities, but are tying our hands when it comes to this issue. Some local people are unhappy with the way we have developed our core strategy. over the last few years, and I believe that there have been errors along the way. But we at least gave them a voice, and we are now a lot closer to having a plan that can be accepted by the majority of our residents. If the government gives more powers regarding planning to a mayor, we could see dramatic changes on this issue alone. The local people of our city must continue to have a say regarding the city's development and future. A mayoral spatial strategy could potentially be the opposite of what many residents would support. By asking for a firm veto, Leeds could potentially seek to rule itself out of this process at the start, rather than just being presented with a document to ratify. The world has had many solitary leaders, kings, queens, Caesars, Führers. Some have been benevolent and have always put the people they lord over first, or at least high on their agenda. Others have not. It may seem a little extreme to compare these levels of rulers with a local mayor, but I'm just trying to make the point that single leadership is sometimes dangerous and seldom brings the results the man on the street actually wants. Doncaster may be a more local example of where things can go horribly wrong. Doncaster's first mayor had 2 votes of no confidence against him, but he refused to go and sat out his full final 4-year term. His fallout with his own party and the Doncaster Council was not over trivial issues, but on a serious failure to support Doncaster's overburdened children's and social services. If a week in politics can be a long time, imagine how 4 years would seem and how much damage could be done along the way. Damage not only to our city, but also to the council's credibility. I second the amendment to the white paper.
Thank you. Councillor Galton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, can I please address myself to the Conservative amendment? I am used to, as a Liberal Democrat, being accused of trying to face both ways on an argument, and seeing the Conservatives really get themselves tangled up over the issue of this devolution deal and the installation of an elected mayor is amazing, to tell you the truth. Councillor Carter and his amendment is tilting at windmills like Don Quixote of Carverley, because the spatial powers that he's hoping to keep in Leeds, there's already a veto there in the deal, in all respects except the actual word. And that's why it's been so easy for the administration to actually accept it. His fear of an elected mayor, which has been mashed by Councillor Collins, it's amazing, because it's the Conservatives that have insisted on having this singular leadership as the key asset as part of any devolution deal that they will give to local authorities. And rather than it being the mayor who is the biggest threat to this city and other local authorities being able to plan their housing targets and their spatial strategy, the bigger threat comes from their own government and their Secretary of State, Three Homes Generic, who is hoping to take the powers away from local authorities completely, never mind from a particular elected mayor. So let's just put that one on the head. In terms of the devolution deal here, Lord Mayor, this is, as Councillor Carter said, the only deal that's available, and that's why we should take it. The fact is, it's not a great deal. What we really wanted was a One Yorkshire devolution deal, and it's down to the failure of leadership of the 2 big main parties in Yorkshire that's not what we've got on the table, that we've got a deal in West Yorkshire which has been struck, which has very limited powers. All of the powers that we do have are not ours by right. There has not been some great constitutional settlement which agrees that people by right should be able to make decisions more locally. It is the powers that have been given to us by the central government and can be taken back just as easily. And that's why we've got to make sure that the powers that we have got are administered properly. And this is one of the greatest dangers of the devolution deal, Lord Mayor, is that we just continue to make decisions in the same way and expect to get different results. Councillor Blake is right to talk about us being in a new normal and how greater freedoms could allow us to deliver better outcomes in a post-COVID world. The current experience is not playing out, because what is coming forward to the next combined authority, for instance, is a bunch of decisions that were all prepared before COVID even happened and actually don't respond to the needs that we have locally to try and ensure that we have an effective West Yorkshire localised economic strategy to bring us out of the recession that is going to hit us very hard very soon. I'm afraid the elected mayor is a paper tiger in the way that the deal has been written so far. But if we want to actually get the full potential out of that deal, we must make sure that the people are involved as well. And so that means that we have a responsibility as decision makers to take decisions with those people. And Councillor Carter was right about the consultation. It is a failure that 4,000 people out of 2 million actually participated in our consultation. Let's make this popular. Let's decide to make decisions in a different way. Let's make devolution meaningful and not just a conversation between a bunch of civil servants in West Yorkshire and a bunch of civil servants in Westminster, and having some politicians endorse it with a rubber stamp at the end of it, but actually leaving the people out of it completely.
Thank you. Have you finished, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Finnegan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The Marlborough Independent Group supports devolution. Indeed, we are great believers in bringing decision-making down to the most local level possible so that communities have the opportunity to set the priorities within their own areas and not to be dictated to by political bodies that often don't have a democratic mandate within the locality and impose their views and policies on communities that often don't want or need them. Devolution is the first step in returning some power and decision-making down to a local level. It is by no means the final step, and if we are serious about democratising the decision-making process, then more decisions need to be taken at a more local level, and for there to be a broader political body representing more clearly the views of varying and diverse communities, rather than a one-size-fits-all or a kind of take it or leave it. The new Metro Mayor to be elected next year will be elected by the supplementary vote system, a system that is likely to favour the major political parties. That means not the Lib Dems. The combined vote of both the Labour and Tory party in most local elections across West Yorkshire amounts to around about 66%, or 2/3 of those voting. This means in next year's Metro Mayor elections, around 1 voter in 3 is likely to be disenfranchised in terms of their vote counting. It gets worse when reflecting on the combined authority that will have representation of all West Yorkshire leaders, all Labour, despite Labour never reaching 50% of the vote in any West Yorkshire local elections recently. The Tories are likely to get 1, possibly 2 seats on the new overseeing body, despite getting around 25% of the overall West Yorkshire vote, and the Lib Dems are likely to get 1 seat, despite their vote being lower on average than the combined Green and Independent vote across West Yorkshire, which amounts to around about 18% of the vote, disenfranchising about 1 in 5 voters. There is therefore a clear democratic deficit in the ruling body that will oversee and scrutinise the new West Yorkshire Mayor, with a majority of non-Labour voters, Tory, Lib Dem, Green and Indy, given a minority of seats and minimising the capacity to hold the Metro Mayor to account. It cannot be fair or reasonable, if devolution is to mean anything, to exclude the majority of voters from having a significant say in how billions of pounds of government funding is to be spent, and for it to be left to any political party to dominate a process and structure which is supposed to bring power to the people, to bring democracies down to a local level. We've been clear in the consultation process, along with our Green and Independent colleagues across West Yorkshire, that the decision-making body needs to accommodate those political voices who reject the 3 major parties, or 2 major parties and the Lib Dems, if we're being honest, that almost 20% of voters should have their views reflected. This already happens at the LGA, where both the Indies and Greens are allocated a joint place in any decision-making body. This is fair and a reasonable way to operate within the LGA, and we believe the new decision-making body overseeing this decision-making process needs to adopt a similar approach, which is richer, more diverse, and more representative of what West Yorkshire residents think, by including the Indies and the Greens. Devolution is a fine process supported by all, but if it is to mean anything worthy of such a noble aim, it must encapsulate all political voices across the political spectrum and not be dominated by one political grouping talking to itself at the exclusion of others. All votes should matter, not just those of the dominant political groups. Diversity is a strength, Lord Mayor, not a weakness. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good morning, everybody. I don't know about the Don Quixote analogy. I think I find myself more a little bit like Sancho Panza these days, sort of offering a commentary on what we see from our group's perspective in a sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek sometimes, but hopefully an informative way. And I don't actually think that Councillor Carter has been chaotic in this regard, because personally, our group believe that the number of checks and balances and safeguardings that can be added to any deal around the spatial strategy and protecting our rights to dictate our own planning policy are vital. And I think if you've been in an area like Garforth that has been in the eye of that particular storm before, you will understand the reason that any added safeguards must be embraced. And that's why, with the amendment that's been accepted this morning, our group will be supporting the motion. Councillor Finnegan has made a lot of the points that we intended to make around the democratic deficit, so we will not revisit those this morning, other than to say the point has been well made, and we hope that is an argument that can be progressed going forward. We've spoke this morning around the consultation and the success, really. Okay, 4,000 people. I wouldn't really call it a success. And I think we all need to bear in mind, when we are moving this piece of business forward this morning, that the biggest consultation, if you like, was a no vote in 2012. So we have a big, big job of work to sell any of this based on that vote only 8 short years ago. There are some positives. The gain share that's been touched upon, the £38 million, is not to be sniffed at. Although on the downside, I think anybody would see that a deal that embraced and encompassed the Leeds City region, rather than the model we've been asked to adopt, would have been preferable. And I think time always judges these things, but I do think we'll see that as a hugely missed opportunity going forward. And of course, this is another step in a process, not the end of the process. So to echo what Councillor Carter said earlier, this is a step forward today, but it does not mean that this deal will be fully embraced by our party going forward at the final stage, because, and I think this point has been well made this morning, it's not only the government response to what's said, it's actually a combined authority response that's going to be equally important around the kind of partnerships that we will be forming in terms of our deal. So with those comments, with those points made, we will be supporting the paper with the amendment this morning. And thank you for the indulgence, and thank you for your time, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor David Blackburn.
Good morning, Lord Mayor. Today we reach a landmark where we look like we are going to go forward on some kind of devolution, and at long last, I might say. But 3 prime ministers later, what we are offered is not much different to what the government were offering in the first place. This is not a victory for devolution, as it lets down the people of Leeds, West Yorkshire, and for that matter, the whole of Yorkshire. It's been rather like being offered an horse for sale to run in the Grand National. We were looking for a reincarnation of Red Rum, and what we have got, or what we have been offered, is a donkey, and a donkey at that with 2 legs at that to sit in that case. I'm totally disappointed and just wonder if the UK government will realise one day that for devolution to work, you need to listen to what they say locally and not trying to impose something from outside. During the consultations, we made it clear our preference was one Yorkshire, and that was with an assembly and not one person rule. Accepting that we probably were not going to win the argument, we did point out that a significant proportion of West Yorkshire councillors would be totally disenfranchised by a mayor Wyker setup, and that there would not be any representation from those affiliated to the LGA independent group, mostly Greens and Independents, which I've got to say there is a significant number of in West Yorkshire. When I had the briefing a week last Friday, I was told the consultations was the best for a mayoral consultation. Well, if this is the best, I would not like to see the worst. The figure of 2,137 does not fill me with confidence, for Leeds that is. And the fact is, in the other authorities, the proportional figure is half of what it was in Leeds. So it doesn't show any public support behind this deal. We welcome the £38 million extra. We welcome the potential additional powers that we might be able to draw down to do with public transport. We welcome the skills and employment functions. In our opinion, we do not see we need the cost of an undemocratic mayor to get these powers. It seems to us that the current Met authorities, along with Wyker, are quite capable of successfully delivering these. We are alarmed by the conferring of the housing and planning function to the elected mayor. Some of us see every day the negative effects that were caused by the former West Yorkshire structure plan put in by the West Yorkshire County Council many years ago. We have also just gone through what's seemed the never-ending process of the core strategy and site allocations plan. We don't want to have to go through all that again, but on this occasion, having it imposed from above, from outside. We argued during the consultation that these powers should not be granted, or if they were, there should be extra safeguards. And on that basis, we are in support of the amendment in the name of Councillor Andrew Carter. On climate change, we believe it is regrettable that Wyker Authority will be committed to a zero carbon by 2038. We will be pressing that the 2030 figure be adopted by the new mayor. And what I cannot guarantee, my party's candidate for mayor will campaign for West Yorkshire to adopt 2030. While there is much in this deal we cannot support, it is undemocratic. The geographical area it covers is wrong, and it does not deal with many of the problems that need to be dealt with, particularly that affect the city of Leeds. But in saying that, the potential of public transport powers within West Yorkshire are welcome as far as they go and should be beneficial to public transport users. In closing, my group will be supporting the amendment of Councillor Carter. When it comes to the main vote, we cannot support the proposals. There's much in it we cannot go along with, but there are significant areas we cannot. I have always said that when we got to this stage, that I would not stand in the way of a deal by trying to vote one down. So we will be abstaining on the proposals. It is also our intention to carry on the fight until we get proper devolution in Yorkshire, the kind our people deserve and not some second-rate devolution. In the meantime, we intend to work within the process to make it work as best it can for our people. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pryor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking in support of the devolution deal for West Yorkshire, particularly on employment and skills. This has never been as relevant and necessary as it is now to support people and businesses in Leeds. So our deal will give them mayoral combined authority powers to help ensure the necessary skills and support are available locally to support employment opportunities and to contribute to our region's prosperity. So this will be achieved through control of the government's adult education budget, currently around £63 million per year. And through this, we gain a welcome opportunity to lay the foundations for a more sustainable economic future for the whole region. The deal will allow West Yorkshire to focus our future skills spend for those aged 19 and over on the core outcomes of progression into further learning and sustainable employment, being paid a living wage, and improved workforce productivity. Devolution offers the opportunity to exercise greater influence and responsiveness to local needs through provision that supports the local labour market, economic development and social inclusion. We'll also benefit from a new partnership between West Yorkshire and Innovate UK to support cutting edge businesses to grow and deliver the jobs and technologies of the future. We do have a proud record here in West Yorkshire on successful partnership working, which does deliver for all our communities, and we are leading the way in using technology to drive inclusive growth, for example, through the digital innovation across the health and care system in Leeds. Our devolution plan further develops and plays to this strength, bringing 75 grand to progress a West Yorkshire local digital skills partnership. This goes hand in hand with our inclusive growth and best council ambitions. Members may be aware of a recent report by the Social Mobility Commission that warns that the UK is beset by a stark geographical inequalities in economic prosperity. Analysis of ONS earnings data has found that in 2019, young workers in London earned on average 39% more per week than those in Yorkshire. So on top of this, the government have been warned that the indiscriminate severing of furlough support next month risks deepening and entrenching that regional inequality. So it's against that backdrop that this West Yorkshire devolution offers a timely and sustainable plan towards locally coordinated solutions that gives a better chance to help secure local jobs and growth for our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Latty.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Graham Latty. Lord Mayor, I'm speaking in support of the report. It was going to be in support of Councillor Carter's amendment, but anyway. So, I'm not a natural supporter of unbridled power. And whilst the Mayor, the power he would have isn't quite unbridled, it's not bridled either. It's a big price, I think, to pay for the undoubted benefits that would come with devolution. But I'm not thrilled by the prospect of the dilution of our own powers, nor of having a mayor foisted on me and my residents. This could be a real problem for me if we were to find that the mayor were to get his or her fingers onto or anywhere near our spatial strategy. And we must be in no doubt that the veto that Councillor Carter is seeking must be a most important part of whatever we put forward. We've got a recent example of what happens when planning in the spatial sense is not implemented with broad consent, and it took a court issue to make that point. Anyway, here we're talking about spatial planning, which means the methods and approaches used by the public and private sector to influence the distribution of people and activities in spaces of various scales. Well, in Airborough, that very nearly happened to us, and I wouldn't wish it on the rest of Leeds. And I don't think there's anybody else who would be in the chamber who really would support that. So let's put a bridle on this, Mayor, because there is a very, very true saying. If something can happen, then at some time it most likely will. I support this report. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will be supporting the devolution paper. In terms of transport, we've been waiting years and looking at London's model of public transport and wondering why we were not allowed that. We've been left behind by not having a deal. As I've worked up and down the country, visiting Manchester, West Midlands and other areas like Liverpool, you can see the massive investment that they have got in transport just because they have had a mayoral deal. The recent Transforming Cities bid, mayoral authorities were just given the money. So it's not just about the 38 million gain share, it's about the 4.2 billion transport fund in 2022 that we will be able to bid into for a mass transit system. It's also about the additional funding that the deal brings in. In Leeds, we've set really ambitious targets. We want a transport system to look like, and this has been sharply thrown into the public eye by the recent pandemic. Many people public transport is a real lifeline. So we desperately need a transport system that works for us. How many people in council, members, have come to me saying they cannot get the routes they want for the people that they want in their wards? Let's not forget that actually this will take us forward and help us to deal with the issues around the buses. Long term, we'll be able to look at the region will access franchising powers in the Bus Services Act of 2017. At this moment in time, people are being let down by transport, not in Leeds, but right across West Yorkshire. We have seen Manchester being able to actually narrow inequalities because they have a deal. They have supported their WASPy women in terms of getting their passes. This brings so much more, and this can really help us to work with the bus operators who we have had some success, but it can give us greater control over the things that people really want. They want a system, a transport system that is reliable and is affordable. At the moment, we have all the subsidies in terms of on the bus routes. We are subsidising those. We need to be running the transport system, but buses are just one part of that very important piece of work that we've been progressing at WICA. We need more control on rail. We are working on walking and cycling, and we need a mass transit system in Leeds and across West Yorkshire. Mass transit is not a silver bullet. It will not single-handedly solve all our rails, but it is a critical part of that is missing from the Leeds transport system and from the West Yorkshire. Devolution is the answer to many questions we have asked in Leeds for years, and it will bring with it the power and funding that we so desperately need. Finally, let us do this for the people. Let's not be left behind, and let's embrace devolution and make it work for the people of Leeds and West Yorkshire. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Aaron.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm the chair of the Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm going to speak about those two things in the other way around. Scrutiny first. Scrutiny of the Combined Authority is at present under-resourced and undervalued. It comprises one officer to look at a budget which is as large as Leeds and much larger than Kirklees. Now, the first reaction to the reform of scrutiny is to have more scrutiny committees, and that might be part of the solution. But we need to build up the culture and profile of scrutiny, increasing the accountability of the mayor to members. Scrutiny should be something like the Select Committee in Westminster. Overview of the relationship between this council and the Combined Authority is more important. We should step back and look at what the MCA is going to look like 2 years after the election. I suspect that many people listening now see the elected mayor as a front man or a front woman for the county being sent in to bat on our behalf. Stuart called him or a paper tiger. Stuart, you could not be wronger. It won't be like that. 2 years after the election, there'll be a big new power base in Yorkshire, and it might be uncomfortable. There'll be disagreement, there'll be conflict. Remember that devolution is not to the Civic Hall, it is to Wellington Street. There'll be a person there who's been elected with 250,000 personal votes, 40 or 50 times more than anyone in Leeds City Council has ever achieved. He or she will have an annual budget much bigger than ours and 5 times that of Calderdale. He or she will have a major public image. Shy retiring types are not elected to these positions. The £38 million available to spend on discretionary products will be allocated in Wellington Street, not rooms 6 and 7. He or she will have a backup of officers down there of high quality. They're nearly as professional and intelligent as ours in Leeds. Their loyalties and career aspirations, we invested in the mayor, not necessarily in the leaders of the council or elected councillors. It is not unknown for elected mayors to use the office for their own advancement. I suggest that we try to put in place a new pattern of contacts with the new regime before he or she arrives in Wellington Street. At the least, we should invite him or her once a year, no deputies accepted, to come to our council chamber and to explain to us the priorities of their administration, the decisions that they've taken in the previous year, and understand our approach to the problems, the various challenges that we all face. That applies even more strongly this unelected, highly paid individual who's going to be running the police service in West Yorkshire. They should be coming to the council once a year for everybody's benefit. The new authority is going to take scrutiny on a scale we can't define now. I suggest that we give attention now to improving scrutiny and building up these relationships before he or she arrives, because there'll be no appetite for change after May 2021. If we don't do it now, there'll be no changes for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maharin?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We're finally being given new powers under this devolution deal to make decisions that will work for Leeds and West Yorkshire. And I don't think anybody here, this council meeting today, would say no to having more local say in those matters. As the devolution deal rightly acknowledges, this could have a huge impact in responding to pressing issues that cross local government boundaries. We're determined to tackle the climate emergency, and we'll make sure that when any spatial development strategy is introduced, it will cover our key priorities, including environmental policy and the need for carbon reduction. As a result of council leaders' negotiations, we retain a veto over the future mayor's decisions on any future spatial development strategy. So we have that lever to ensure it supports our ambitions for a more sustainable future. However, as is ever the case, when this government gives with one hand, it takes away with the other. In its current white paper, Planning for the Future, the government claims it wishes to cut red tape to speed up the planning process, a claim built entirely on the myth that house building is being held up by local councils and not by landowners and developers sitting on sites with planning permission but not starting work on them. It would be more accurate to say the government wants to cut local oversight and the democratic process in planning matters. The government proposes new zoning areas with growth areas being suitable for comprehensive developments that would automatically have outline permission. Laughably, Robert Jenrick claims he's intent on using an algorithm to determine such applications, even after the shambolic mess his government made with their decision to use prejudicial algorithms to determine students' exam results this summer. The government proposals would sweep away the ability to give proper scrutiny to planning applications. They open the market to speculative developers building what they want, how they want, and where they want. The proposal, the government's planning white paper, are the exact opposite of devolution. Before we have even had a chance to use the newly devolved role, this government seems intent on watering it down and handing the reins to developers. You can dress it up any way you like, call it streamlining or simplifying or using any other buzzword, but what it means is less say in local decisions that affect local lives. I welcome the devolution deal set before us today, but would urge the government to reconsider its national plans for removing local decision-making in planning matters and centralising control at a time when we are poised to accept powers being supposedly devolved from Westminster to West Yorkshire, not the other way around. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Sorry, couldn't find the unmute button there. Well, this morning has been a very interesting discussion from my point of view, because we've had Labour cheerleading for the deal. Probably, they say, see the morality as a Labour sinecure, a bit like the Police and Crime Commissioner, which was a complete disaster in my opinion. And the rest of us keep saying quite openly that this is not a good deal. It's not even a third-rate deal, actually, but it's the only deal in town. And if we want some even limited devolution, we have to accept it. But like a lot of the other speakers, I'm of the view that we should quite clearly say at this point, we'll accept reluctantly, but wish to see considerable changes. I would just touch briefly on Andrew's amendment. Again, we would support, because obviously it states something which may or may not be under threat, but there's no reason why we shouldn't reiterate our opposition to having planning targets dictated. It is a bit rich. I appreciate Andrew's point, and Andrew has over the years been a vocal critic of imposed housing targets, etc. But it is a bit rich from people like Dawn talking about the dictatorial powers of the elected mayor, bearing in mind its Conservative policy, and more importantly, the need to get local control over planning, particularly when the Conservative government now appear to be taking that away from us. We will support the amendment, and we will reluctantly support the devolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Anderson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In welcoming the principle of the deal and the much needed investment package it unlocks, I also support the amended motion in the name of Councillor Andrew Carter. I have a number of points, however, that I think need to be looked into. For example, the consultation. The consultation did not reach the citizens of this city, nor West Yorkshire. And when I asked for clarification on this about the communication plan, I was told by officers, although it wasn't in the public domain, this communication plan has been developed and widely shared with local authority communication teams. And if scrutiny members want it, they can have it. Well, where's the leadership there? I also feel that scrutiny of the mayor and the mayoral authority needs to be beefed up, both within the mayoral authority and within Leeds City Council. This may need more councillors being sent to the mayoral authority to scrutinise, but we also need to look internally as well. How are we going to amend our scrutiny boards in order to reflect the new norm, or whatever you want to talk about it? In particular, however, I do think we need to do something about the scrutiny of the police commissioner role. It needs to be beefed up. We need to get more councillors involved in what's happening here, and we need to make the deputy mayor more accountable to the public when it comes to policing, because I think one of the major problems with the police commissioner role at the moment is that they are not really that accountable to the public in terms of what's happening. And there's also, speaking personally as the scrutiny chair with responsibility supposedly for this area, it's very, very fuzzy as to where my scrutiny board's responsibilities start and finish. Now, Councillor Blackburn has already pointed out a potential concern over the mayor's role in climate change policy. And to that, I would add that when I've asked for clarity, I've not received it in respect of the implication of the Clean Air Act either. So in respect of housing, I just want to make some points here. Do we really know what the mayor's remit's going to be in terms of green infrastructure? In terms of paragraph 99 of the agreement, what does this actually mean? What are these broad powers? How are they going to be exercised? We've got some council officers who are concerned conflicts with planning. How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to deal with the problems with neighbourhood planning? It's a big, big mess. And finally, there's the strategic infrastructure tariff, SIL by any other name. That's not been set clearly how it's going to be calculated out. I support the motion, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you. Good morning, Lord Mayors and fellow members. I too speak in support of the devolution deal for West Yorkshire. This is the first mayoral devolution deal for West Yorkshire, but it follows on from other deals previously struck with the government. We had the city deal in 2012 and then the growth deal in 2014. The growth deal was the biggest in the country at the time, and I am pleased that this new deal includes the biggest gain share funding agreement in the country now. We proved with the growth deal in 2014 that we have a very strong track record of delivering excellent results locally. This devolution deal will help us to do more of that. The growth deal allowed us to bring in close to 3 billion in public and private sector investment into the region to boost growth and jobs. This led to the creation of over 20,000 jobs and added over 2 billion a year to the West Yorkshire economy. It helped around 5,000 businesses to grow and created over 4,000 work opportunities for young people aged 16 to 24, including around 2,000 apprenticeships. It helped create 1,000 more park and ride spaces across West Yorkshire, and we know the benefits that has had for Leeds. It funded new rail stations, including at Kirkstall Forge, which was used by over 200,000 passengers last year. And it funded 67 kilometres of new cycle track, which has seen over 2 million trips made. And it also contributed to our climate change ambitions, provided low-cost heating to over 2,000 homes and contributing funds to our own district heating scheme. I'm confident that this new devolution deal, much more can be achieved locally. It is a shame it took so long to arrive, as we could have seen more improvements sooner. After the growth deal in 2014, discussions on further deal began in August 2015. The ministers who we had to negotiate with kept changing, and so did the government's preferred geography for a deal. We were originally encouraged by the government to go for geography based on Leeds City region, but they changed their mind and turned that down in 2017. We were instead asked to come with another option, so went for One Yorkshire and submitted that to them in March 2018. They didn't like that either. So eventually in March 2020, they agreed to the West Yorkshire geography. I'm glad we finally got there at last, as it comes at a vital time for our economy and the future of our young people. So I fully support this, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It's a pleasure to speak on the minded to deal for West Yorkshire. As elected members have noted, aside from Brexit, devolution is going to be one of the biggest changes to local government and democracy in West Yorkshire for a generation or more. Definitely the biggest for Leeds since the incorporation of the City Council in the 1970s. So why then, my Lord Mayor, is a consultation response of 0.2%, I'll say that again, 0.2 of 1/5 of 1%, something to crow about, especially on a subject as important as devolution? Whilst I don't intend to just quote statistics, from across the city of Leeds, just over 2,000 people responded. That figure is only around 0.3% of all the people that we are elected to represent. Does this mean that the views of 99.7% of the people we represent doesn't matter? Or was this a particularly poor consultation process? It was agreed between the combined authority and local councils to promote the consultation to the widest possible audiences using a range of digital and non-digital channels. So how is it that so few residents have actually even heard of this and have therefore had no opportunity to respond? Whilst we on this side of the chamber are broadly supportive of the move to a mayoral authority, as it will unlock the powers and funding that is a must for our region, surely this must only be following a thorough and robust consultation process. As mentioned by my colleagues previously, we also have many concerns in relation to the strategic planning and consent required. There are many points within the housing and planning section that concern my ward in particular, and my colleagues and I in Pudsey are greatly appreciative of the amendment put forward by Councillor Andrew Carter, and we're very glad that this has now been accepted. Whilst there are a number of arguments both supporting and opposing the transfer of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Police and Crime Panel into a mayoral authority structure, we should also be mindful of the accountability and transparency of an unelected appointed deputy mayor who will head this function. Effectively, this is a step backward from the explicitly publicly elected PCC position in place now, and we feel that it is imperative that the PCC and the PCP functions remain impartial. Whilst on the subject of scrutiny and accountability, holding the mayor to account and highlighting, scrutinising their decisions is a key part of the new model. As highlighted by my colleague Councillor Peter Harrand, we feel it is important that the current scrutiny function is enhanced to ensure oversight of the mayor and the new powers they will exercise. Sorry?
Time's up, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I believe I've made my points. Thank you.
Councillor Actor.
Yeah, thank you, my Lord Mayor. I speak in support of the minded to devolution agreement for West Yorkshire. As we all know, it has been a very long time coming. We had to watch from as far as other areas were granted. Birmingham and Manchester in 2017, then Sheffield in 2018. It's fair to say our negotiation with the government have been difficult. They constantly move the goalposts. Since 2015, our leader and chief executive led the negotiation for our side. On the government side, in that time, we've had 3 prime ministers, 4 chancellors, 5 secretaries of state for communities, not stable government. It explains why they kept changing their mind. But council, I am now confident it was worth the wait. We know that we have got the biggest gain share deal of anyone. That's 38 million funding a year over 30 years for its investment to drive growth and tackle our priorities. We are getting more money for our priorities such as transport, skill, and housing. But perhaps most important of all, it puts Yorkshire at the top table of mayoral authorities. This is important when it comes to being noticed by the government. It means we are better able to access government funding streams and powers that are reserved for areas with mayors. For example, it gives us access to a bus franchising and a new brownfield regeneration fund, and there will be more in future. We all wanted to get devolution deal done sooner, but one benefit of taking so long is that we can compare with other and copy their best bits and ignore their bad bits. It looks like we have got the great deal that will help address some of the West Yorkshire and our own challenges. It comes at an important time as we need all the help we can to recover from this pandemic, and I am happy to support this, my Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I speak in support of what would have been Councillor Carter's amendment, particularly on planning issues and others. Nothing will be more relevant to planning as the arrangements in place on transport across West Yorkshire, particularly as regards new housing developments wherever they take place. Now, when the draft vision for rail was conceived, the world was a different place. Since March, passenger numbers on buses and trains have plunged for reasons we know only too well. Trains alone now depend on £1 billion per month of government support. Passenger number growth figures previously envisaged are now very out of date. Many of the recommendations in the draft vision are sensible, especially those supporting economic growth. But the whole landscape has now changed, and the Mayor will have to understand this as a matter of urgency. Train and bus passenger numbers are still at desperately low levels, and even at 40 or 50% will be grossly uneconomic. How will the Mayor address this? What are the latest projections on numbers? We cannot rely on outdated figures as we have been doing hitherto. How will a mass transit scheme be viable, and how will the Mayor ensure that consent is guaranteed to each city and town? The Mayor will need to draw up a tight business case and make it work across the region and for each city and town. Bus services are in a parlous state and are effectively zombie companies run by the state. The Mayor needs to be very careful about assuming responsibility for what could become an enormous ongoing liability on wheels. People are avoiding public transport and are buying record number of second-hand cars. So if they were going to have confidence restored to travel on a mass transit service, they must feel that they have a buy-in to it and feel that they're part of the process. And this is where the response rate to the consultation has been so poor and needs to be urgently addressed. 4,000, as people have said, have responded, which by my maths means that 99.98% of the population did not respond. Now, people in 20 years' time will live and work in a different way and will travel in a different way. So let's just say HS2 is cancelled, and who'd bet the mortgage on it not being? The public need to have a West Yorkshire system which is economically tight, is not only acceptable to Leeds, but centred on Leeds, and includes the east and north of the city, not just the west and south. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I speak in support of the amendment of Councillor Andrew Carter, and I welcome that it's been accepted by the administration. I also wish to thank officers for the time that they've put into this. I know some of us have peppered them with questions over the last few weeks, and they've done everything that they can to provide answers. I wish to touch on two specific issues mentioned in the report. The first of those is policing, and the second are the finance functions. These were the two areas which had the largest amount of opposition voices to them. There are people questioning what would devolution deliver in these two areas, and that's perfectly understandable because the economic security and the security of people's homes and businesses at this time is paramount. What people, it was very clear from the report, what people did not want to see was another layer of politicians, were big tax rises, and were for the police service to become a political football in this region. And I welcome the changes that the Home Secretary seeks to bring in around police and crime commissioners. And I would hope that from a devolution deal, we can be on the front foot at adopting them, at making sure that the police and crime panel has real teeth to hold the mayor and a deputy mayor for policing to account. It is high time that we make sure that the Police and Crime Commission is accountable. And that means changing the way the panel works and taking it out to communities across West Yorkshire. So whether you're in Halifax, Huddersfield or Hare Hills, you can have a chance to be involved in policing across this region. But similarly, we have to ask questions about where control lies for policing. If the mayor and deputy mayor disagree, where does the buck stop and who has the final say on this? Because there are real challenges for policing in our region. I welcome the opportunity to share better information, and I welcome the opportunity for a mayor to be further involved in how communities are policed, but it's right that we seek to address that now. Secondly, on the financial issues, we've already heard that that support in 2012 for a mayor was, well, it wasn't there, quite frankly, and we've got a big job to do if we wish to sell people on what a mayor will do. And if a mayor comes in and their first job is to stick a great big tax on residents in this city and businesses across West Yorkshire, it will kill devolution in the crib, and we will not see the support across this region. Now, if a strategic infrastructure tariff seeks to put a land tax on and develop land, that's the sort of tax I think that people across the region will be interested in. But if it seeks to make sure that, ensure that business cannot develop, if it seeks to kill development in the crib before we can get out of the recession that we are in, then that's a real problem. And so subsidiarity needs to be paramount here, and hearing the voices at the lowest possible level. A new mayor has a great opportunity, but a new mayor comes with great risks. And I hope the council's scrutiny function can be involved. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Blackburn. Councillor Blackburn, Anne Blackburn.
Yes, Lord Mayor, can you hear me?
I can.
Good, okay. Here we go. Lord Mayor, I am concerned that the consultation carried out was done during the coronavirus pandemic, as I think that more could have been done to try and ensure that people were aware that there was a consultation if this had not been the case. Bearing in mind the consultation covered 5 authorities, Leeds, Wakefield, Kirklees, Bradford and Calderdale, the amount of responses received of 4,413 seems quite low, to put it mildly. During the consultation, we stated that our preference was for one Yorkshire with an assembly. But we have had thrusted upon us what is in front of us now. A devolution agreement which is contingent upon West Yorkshire proceeding to establish a new mayoral combined authority, where the mayor will provide overall leadership. And that is the only game in town. How will the mayor be held accountable to the 5 authorities? As yet, we do not know, but I would hope that he/she would attend at least 2 council meetings a year of each authority so that councillors can question the decisions made. It does concern me that the powers the mayor has includes statutory spatial planning powers to produce spatial development strategy, powers to designate a mayoral development agency and mayoral development corporations, and housing and land acquisition powers. So I am happy that the Tory amendment has been accepted in relation to any mayoral spatial strategy, but I will be abstaining on the vote on this deal, as though there are some good parts of it, which include the idea of bus franchising, the power to do that. There is much of it that I cannot go along with, as it is leaving such large decisions to a few people. And I don't think that we have enough information in front of us it doesn't give me confidence that
Councillor
I can go
Blackburn.
along with it.
Sorry, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's always difficult following Councillor Blackburn, but I'll do my best. I'm speaking in support of the amendment in the name of Councillor Carter, which will hopefully be the substantive motion. This is not a perfect deal. I think many people have said that. It's not the geographical area many of us would have liked to see, but it does bring significantly more money to our area. It does bring significantly more resource to our area. It gives power and decision making, brings it much more closely to the people it's going to affect. And it's something that, while it's not perfect, we have to work with it and make it the best it can be. For those that think there are no powers going the other way, from the council to the combined authority, and those who swallowed that line, I suggest you go back and look very carefully at the deal. There are, and you might want to think about what they are. We need to make sure we get the oversight right. Councillor Harron's points were really important. We have managed to secure some improvements through consultation, through discussions with the government. The fact there will be all-party representation, and I don't share the pessimism of some of the others who think, well, that means it has to always be 2 parties that run things. Let's leave that to the people of West Yorkshire to decide who's going to run things and who's going to be making up those constituent bodies. It's down to this group on this council that we have all party representation, and it's down to this group that we're not being forced into letting the combined authority set the spatial strategy, although we don't believe the guarantees go far enough, and that is the point of the amendment, and I'm pleased to see that it seems all parties are going to accept that. Finally, Lord Mayor, we also need to accept devolution can go in 2 directions. It's good that more powers are coming to this to the West Yorkshire region and to the city, but there's also an opportunity for this council to devolve more powers and trust the communities that it serves and let local members and local communities take more decisions. There's much more we could do on that basis in Leeds. So thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll leave it there and I'll support the amendment and hopefully therefore the substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall Takun.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and good morning, Council. I am speaking in support of our plan for devolution for West Yorkshire. Through our deal, the mayoral combined authority will have powers to support young people to get the opportunities and skills necessary to reach their ambitions. Our region is one of the youngest in the UK, providing a talent pool that's digitally skilled and enterprising. But we also recognize and are committed to combating the digital divide, and initiatives such as our 100% Digital Leeds program that have supported people, whatever their background, to gain the digital skills they need and get connected. Our devolution plan comes at a crucial time for the region's young people. There is a wealth of evidence that the impact of the pandemic on young people and their future job prospects will be far-reaching and long-lasting. There are several reports that indicate that youth unemployment has already started to rocket as a result of COVID-19. On top of this, the Office of Budgetary Responsibility says that unemployment could hit 12% by Christmas, remain at 11% until June, and stay at 10% next September. The government knows that 16 to 24-year-olds suffer disproportionately from recessions, yet the support young people have received from the government in recent months has been chaotic and ineffective, too often failing to reflect our local needs. My Lord Mayor, I am a mother of 16-year-old twin boys who did not sit for their GCSEs, and so are many other young ones across the country. Their lives and their results, which they deserved, has been robbed. From the shambolic allocation of GCSEs and A-level grades to the lack of genuine support and solutions for young people struggling to find their feet in a harsh and unwelcoming jobs market, there has been a disregard for future generations that has been borne out over the past 10 years. And sadly, we have also come to expect of this from this government. If we are to ensure that everyone has the same opportunities to get on in life, it is imperative that we acknowledge the scale and scope of the challenges that we face and ensure that opportunities are spread beyond London and specifically target the highest levels and areas of deprivation. In Leeds, we want to make sure that young people, whatever their background, are not held back. Importantly, we will always listen to the voices of young people, and I welcome the opportunity that devolution offers to our response accordingly. Council, I fully support our devolution deal. It offers creativity, it offers imagination, and tailored investment in our young people, also in their skills and in our digital future, as we so rightly need, of which we cannot expect to be delivered nationally. My Lord Mayor, change is one of the only constant things that we have in life, and I welcome the devolution deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor James Lewis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think if we were in the council chamber, we'd have to wait for the applause to subside after that brilliant speech. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things on this. I've been involved in devolution longer than I think most people in the council has. And I think let's be absolutely clear about how we've got to where we've got today. And it is because for the last 10 years, the devolution issue has been steered from the centre by the Conservative Party and the Conservative and Lib Dem government, who have made it absolutely clear that to get anything out of central government, we have to have an elected mayor. I share concerns about an elected mayor. I think we've got some great examples of elected mayors, and we've got some that maybe haven't delivered what we're expected, but we have to have an elected mayor, whether we like it or not. And given, turning to Downing Street again, given some of the behaviour we've seen over the summer, I certainly share many of the concerns that have been raised about powerful, unelected people making decisions that rule over our lives. And nobody would want to see that happen here. I'm sure none of us would sign up to this. But again, other members have talked about it, and I won't repeat the whole list because members have spoken very well about it. But if we want a mass transit system, better bus services, investment in transport, investment in digital infrastructure, investment in brownfield land and regeneration to take the pressure off greenfield development, and we want that money out of central government, the only way we can access that is by having an elected mayor. we've spent 5 years ago, we submitted a bid for a city region mayor, and I know there's Councillor Carter and others would prefer a city region bid. That was not accepted by central government. I don't think we even got an explanation why they did not accept it. Yes, I accept we are where we are, and we need to move forward on this basis. If we don't accept this deal and continue to work to make it better, then I fear we won't get anything at all. And given the last 10 years of this government has been an obsession about creating new mayors and positions, and let's not forget it was the Conservative Party that imposed police and crime commissioners on us without any consultation or referendum. But if we don't accept an elected mayor, we will lose out on funding, and who knows where we'll end up with. Given their current obsessions, we may well have a West Yorkshire algorithm distributing funds around the area. That's how they want to sort out children's future. That seems to be, according to reading the Sunday Times, that's how they want to start doing planning applications. Let's not have a West Yorkshire algorithm distributing funds in the future. And let's all work together. I share a lot of the concerns that have been raised by speakers from all parties, and particularly around issues like scrutiny and accountability, where we really need to get it right. But let's move forward, recognise this is a key to huge amounts of funding. And let's not forget, and I make this final point, the biggest shift of power that's happened as far as the council's been concerned over the last 10 years has been the government's removal of £1.7 billion of funding for the council, which allowed us to make choices around many areas of public spending. Let's not give up on even more funding, and let's move forward to make it better. I second Councillor Blake's motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm not sure what some members have been partying or drinking over the bank holiday, but who thought we'd have had contributions this morning of Councillor Blackburn's donkey and Councillor Galton's rather contemporary production of the ingenious Don Quixote of Carvelly. Of course, a man who's characterised as a man of strong integrity and wisdom. I'm not sure Councillor Galton meant that in his description of Councillor Carter. One could only assume if Councillor Galton was having a part in this production, it would be that of Falstaff, the cowardly knight, doing anything to get a bit of favourable benefit from Mistress Quickly. But I'll move on, Lord Mayor, to the matter in hand. Whilst we welcome the additional £63 million funding for adult education in the region, it's noted that the mayor will have their own priorities across the region that might not mirror those of the constituent councils, such as here in Leeds. Many councils see NEETs as a priority area for development, including Leeds, and are already working on strategies to track and secure education, employment and training for young people. The work's not always consigned, though, within the boundaries of one local authority area. Indeed, that what will become the mayoral area either. There must therefore be a mechanism for neighbouring authorities in North Yorkshire to contribute to the skills agenda. Likewise, further education settings operating outside of the mayoral area, but educating adult residents within West Yorkshire should not be forgotten about. This is certainly the case in the area that I represent, the Harewood ward, where about half of the children resident in Harewood ward attend schools and colleges in North Yorkshire. Another item we wish to raise is that the scrutiny of the education budget and how it's allocated and spent across the areas. It will be difficult to compare between cities themselves, but even more so at a local level across communities within cities. Will the scrutiny function within the to be established MCA have the capability and the skills to undertake ultra-local scrutiny to ensure that all adults who want to learn new skills, either from the job market or simply for the pleasure of learning, have the opportunity to do so in an accredited establishment close to where they live? And on the topic of education, Lord Mayor, I would just like to follow up on some of the comments made by members of the administration about education in England and the use of algorithms. I'm sure that no member of the administration will be willing to stand up and say that our council don't use algorithms and the like in sorting out our daily functioning. And there are administrations elsewhere within the United Kingdom that also feel algorithms have a place in how we function. For example, in Wales, where the administration in Wales is a Labour-run administration, and the Education Cabinet member is a Liberal Democrat, and they followed exactly the same mechanism as the Department for Education in England in managing GCSE. So after the speeches we've heard today, Lord Mayor, one can only assume that Labour members in this council are equally as appalled with the Labour Lib Dem coalition that's happening in Wales, and that should be a pointer to any resident in Leeds who might think that a Labour administration propped up by Lib Dems would be a good idea. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking in support of the devolution report that is before council today. And firstly, I'd just like to say, actually, I've been in the chamber and in many council meetings, and never have I heard the Tory opposition speak out against their own government and what their own government are suggesting, as much as I have this morning, I have got to say. So it seems to me that poverty, inequality, child poverty, school funding and finances all sit on the back burner, but yet when we start to talk about spatial planning and a mayoral election, then it seems that the Tories put themselves into gear. I'm speaking, Lord Mayor, on housing in the city. And we all know how important housing is to us as a administration. And we know there's a massive need for housing that exceeds what is available. And despite our best efforts to deliver new housing to those that need it the most, it still remains one of our biggest challenges that this city faces, providing good quality and accessible homes to meet our growing population. Our housing is about more than bricks and mortar, providing a safe and secure environment for years to come. For families, strengthening our communities and creating an environment that people want to live in. Throughout COVID, we have ensured that our housing schemes have continued to be delivered, providing a home for generations to come for families in Leeds. We have set an ambitious target to deliver 1,500 high-quality council homes over the next 5 years to meet increasing demand in the city. And significant progress has been made with land already identified for over 750 of these. In addition, working with partners will deliver another 240 new extra care homes for older people in the next 4 years. This will bring the total extra care housing provision to around 500 homes by 2024 and halfway to our target of 1,000 by 2028. I've recently seen the good quality of the housing and how thrilled our tenants are to be given the keys to these new properties, I have to say. But it's not just about council housing, though. We have ambition to deliver affordable housing across the board. And we have shown how this can be achieved by working and having a clear vision and working with registered providers, amongst others, to deliver new quality housing within the city. We have proven over the years that we know doing things locally is far better. With this devolution deal, it will enable us to deliver much more on a local level. I support the report, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just reflecting on, I think, what Councillor Actung said, the change isn't one of the only constants. Taxes are also one of the constants. And as Councillor Robinson said earlier, we should be mindful where the burden falls. Turning to the Conservative Group's submission to the consultation, it includes the concerns we have over the protection of our green belt and green spaces, an issue of importance, particularly to the residents of Horsforth and Rawdon. There is already a lack of discussion between neighbouring councils on planning applications and infrastructure programmes near the borders. The proposals for the mayor lack detail on how a mayor would link the various authorities and could in fact encourage conflict between the various constituent councils. Planning should remain within the remit of constituent councils, and that should be in the form of a veto. Horsforth recently voted in favour of a neighbourhood plan after many years of the document being prepared, and the mayor's office also mustn't come into conflict with the wishes of local people. With the mess this council is already in over the successful challenge in the courts from the Ayrburn Neighbourhood Forum over the Greenbelt sites allocated within the adopted site allocation plan, we must stay alert to the potential for a mayor to overrule the wishes of local people. While the financial settlement offered in this devolution deal by government is the most generous agreed so far, and the accountability of allocating this funding is moving from London to West Yorkshire is most welcome, the concerns raised today must be addressed. As has also been discussed, carrying the public with us on devolution is essential for the legitimacy of the role in the eyes of our residents. We must do better at communicating the benefits and drawbacks of the deal as it develops to allow people to form their own judgments. Finally, Lord Mayor, I accept that much as what have been spoken about today has been repeated. The administration should perhaps reflect on our view that we need to reiterate the points we make, given the aforementioned mess with the site allocation plan, to ensure we understand the implications of the decisions we take on behalf of our city. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Can I now call on Councillor Blake to sum up? Councillor Blake?
Apologies, Lord Mayor. Sorry, thank you. I'm at a loss to know where to start with summing up with this debate. I just feel it's such a shame that the Tories on the council at the time didn't join us in objecting to George Osborne, insisting that a directly elected mayor was the only option in town with the devolution deals. Where were you then? You know, it's no good crying now over spilt milk. You know, you supported your government, however inconsistent they've been over the last few years. And we are now where we are. And we have argued repeatedly in the council chamber that the Tory model of devolution is too prescriptive. It worked on a one-size-fits-all model, which clearly hasn't worked around the country. And that's why there have been so many failures in getting devolution deals across the line. And everyone in the chamber knows that the administration, the Labour group, have argued consistently for a Leeds City Region deal. And when we were denied that by the government, we went for a One Yorkshire deal. We were denied that. And then we saw firsthand the government channeling millions of pounds of money to areas who already had directly elected mayors. And of course, we came together across the districts and recognised that this is the only show in town and the only possibility that we have to get more money out of Whitehall down into the local areas under our control so that we can start to spend it to address the shocking inequalities, woeful lack of investment in our areas that has been the story of this government going back over 10 years now. As we've heard, we've had to suffer from 3 different prime ministers, 4 chancellors, 5 secretary of states, and of course what we haven't mentioned is 3 northern powerhouse ministers. Well, I just want to ask everyone on this council, where are the successes of the northern powerhouse ministers and the rhetoric that's gone with regard to investing in the north, in Yorkshire, in Leeds itself? And we know that so many people in our communities are suffering from that lack of investment, whether it's across education, young people, life opportunities, transport, infrastructure. It's all there to see. So we have seized the opportunity now to move forward, and then recognising that devolution in England is far from perfect and won't address all of the problems we have. We know that we have to grasp the opportunity and go forward with it. I just wonder if some of the comments from the Tories means that because of the shambolic performance of the government over the last few months, they're really worried about the outcome of the election. Is that what's underneath some of the comments that you've made? But, you know, we have an opportunity now to move forward. I have to say on the planning issue, the veto already exists in the deal. And I think what you're trying to do today is deflect from what must be a horror story for you from your Secretary of State and the plans to undermine local democracy even further in the area of planning must be a real shock for you. And we hope you will work with us to lobby them to make sure that we preserve local democracy, particularly in these areas. But we have an opportunity now to move forward with confidence, to move forward together to make sure that we have a mayor that can assist us in arguing for an equitable form of investment, more money coming into our communities, more money to deal with the inequalities that have been so cruelly exposed by the COVID epidemic. This is our moment to put things to one side and come together and use the devolution deal to really make sure we have the powers to do what we want. We know devolution has a long way to go in England. We know we won't get the powers that we know we need, but we also know through the experience of our growth deal that when we have more powers, more resource, however limited, we make a much better job of delivering on behalf of our people if we can do it locally and working with our partners in our communities. I'm pleased to recommend this deal to Council, and I look forward to the discussions and debates going forward to make sure that we put ourselves in the best possible place to get the best deal for everyone in across Leeds and West Yorkshire. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now go into voting, but can I just draw to a member's attention? As I did at the last remote council meeting, I'm going to invite whips to vote on the behalf of their groups. If any members wish to cast their votes differently, then please let me know when the whips are voted. If a recorded vote is requested in accordance with CPR 16.4, I propose to manage the vote in the same way a member's vote will be recorded in the minutes. So can we go to the votes, and I'll call on the whips of each group. Councillor Dawson, are you for or against?
Is this for the amendment in the name of Councillor Carter, Lord Mayor?
Sorry, I will call for the votes in the name and amendment of Councillor Carter. Councillor Dawson, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Labour Group vote for the amendment, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, are you for, against, or abstain?
Conservative Group vote in favour of the Conservative amendment in the name of Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, are you for, against, or abstain?
We are for the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Finnegan, are you for, against, or abstain?
For the amendment, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, are you for, against, or abstain?
For the amendment, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Blackburn, are you for, against, or abstain?
For, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. That's been carried. Can I now call for the vote in the substantive motion? Councillor Dawson, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Labour Group vote for the substantive, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Curran, are you for, against, or abstain?
Conservative Group are in favour, for, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, are you for, against, or abstain?
We are for the motion.
Councillor Finnegan, are you for, against, or abstain?
MBI Group is in favour of the motion.
Councillor Dobson, are you for, against, or abstain?
For, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn, are you for, against, or abstain?
Our group wish to abstain, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. This substantial motion has been carried. Can I take the opportunity to thank you members for joining me today, and also thank the member of the public who have joined us on the meeting. So please have a good afternoon and be careful. Thanks.